As usual, imagine yourself getting hit by Trunk Kun, waking up and not being ice skied, but instead being compelled to perform a spirit contract with a random dude. Then, out of nowhere, you wind yourself inheriting a demon power from 300 years ago, and you become the most powerful spirit swordsman. That's the story of our ugly orphan protagonist, who had to grow up fast, having lost his parents when he was just a young boy. His financial situation had been challenging, despite having ancestors renowned as excellent exorcists, but the present reality reduced him to doing odd jobs like fortune-telling and computer servicing. But being a worthless broker, he didn't always have the required spare parts. So instead, he had to scavenge for them, often resorting to liberating discarded items from the trash, just like the trashy loser he was. How sad is that? He even had to work hard on finding a sugar mama's, with unrequited hope, like marrying into money, but instead of finding gold givers, he only found gold diggers. When he got home, his neighbor arrived, seeking help with a malfunctioning laptop. And once again, our broke-ass protagonist goes out on a hunt for more junk. But this time, he saw something that made him stop in his tracks. A white-haired guy fighting with a young lowly girl, and it looked so real. He thought they must be filming an action scene for a movie, as the special effects coming from their hands were incredible. Jan walked home, but his mind was far away thinking about the movie. Suddenly, Truck Kun appeared to issue our youngster a ticket, as he felt the impact shudder through him. When he opened his eyes, an unimaginable sight stood before him, his younger self staring back at him. He thought that he traveled through time. But then, Zai, the same guy from the movie scene, stepped out and shook his head no. No, he hadn't gone back in time. His body was dead due to the accident. He was now nothing but a useless spirit, making him even more pathetic than he already was. He finds it hard to believe such an unbelievable truth until he sees himself on the news, but the shock drives him mad and starts to act like a comedian. Zai explained he was an exorcist and proposed that Yang become his soul image. A soul image is a spirit that can still communicate with the living, and they are said to have great spiritual power. As Yang was already able to see spirits while alive, Zai thought he was the perfect candidate. Right now, Yang's spirit hangs in the balance. Zai said he could stay for only 7 days, and after 7 days, spirits transitioned into specters, inviting impending punishment. At that critical moment, the lowly girl from the trash, "Sorry I meant" from the movie scene, also reappeared, sending the protagonist flying with a shout. Yang, on the other hand, pets her head and asks if she wants a lollipop, but she desires a banana, so he gives her his yellow one. Unfortunately, she was too greedy and wanted Zai's spiritual powers too, prompting him to resist and attempt her elimination. A battle erupted in the hospital corridors, but Yang ended up under the girl's control. To reclaim him, Zai has to give up his powers, but the girl sends Yang to somewhere deep within the mountains. The girl withdrew, and the scene shifted, revealing the protagonist landing in a dark forest surrounded by malevolent spirits. The girl prohibited the spirits from touching him, designating him as her bait. Zai, the leader of the Tengoku family, possessed immense spiritual power. The lowly girl sought this power for her rebirth instead of giving birth, to become invincible in the world. But Yang interrupts the girl's speech and flees just like that. In the middle of the forest, he encountered Zai, believing he had deceived the girl easily. Zai provided him with spiritual binding rings, urging him to form a spiritual pact and become his shadow for salvation. But Yang gets possessed by the girl and reluctantly accepts, underestimating Zai. Realizing Yang's deception, Zai revealed his exorcist abilities. A battle ensued, with Zai deflecting attacks and playfully throwing the ring at him, joking that he didn't want to marry him and proposing a lifetime of servitude. Eventually, the protagonist decided to put on the ring, unleashing the incredible power of becoming the bride. "Sorry, I meant the incredible powers of the Pact." They subdued the specter, who took on the form of an innocent girl that didn't want to leave this world. But Zai purified her, revealing her past as a serial killer and maintaining a balance between light and darkness. Suddenly, Zai received a call, marking the beginning of their first job together. They both arrive at the airport, and a girl with her massive destruction halfway exposed, waiting for them. Yang, who died virgin, instantly falls for her. She introduced herself as Zai's fiancée Xiao, but Yang didn't believe her and thought she was joking. She can see Yang and knows that he has become Zai's spiritual shadow. On their way, she tells him that as his fiancée, she wants to get along with him and considers them like siblings. Yang, being a virgin loser, gets tempted by her massive destruction again and wonders how Zai ended up with such a pretty girl, as Zai doesn't seem to get along much with her. Zai explains that Xiao will stay at the usual hotel, and the atmosphere in the car suddenly changes. Upon arriving, Zai bids her farewell coldly. The protagonist wants to know why he is so mean to her, but at that moment, he receives a call and instructs Yang to inform her about dinner at the Tango-ku mansion the next day. Yang reprimanded that he's his partner, not just a messenger, but Zai ignores him and leaves. He goes up to his fiancée's room, but as a ghost, he can't touch objects. He enters the room, announcing his arrival with an important message for her. However, he finds something completely unexpected. Like every typical girl, she has a face mask on. While playing video games with Lay's chips, she is annoyed by the interruption, but Yang tells her he knows how to play and helps her level up. While Zai is risking his life and is busy purifying specters, Xiao offers the protagonist a cup of tea, but he wonders why she's acting differently like every other typical girl. She tells him that Zai wouldn't like to see this part of her. Regardless, neither of them cares about the engagement. They haven't even legally signed it, despite having unrequited love for him, revealing she's a simpi. She is drawn to his appearance and is his fanatical admirer. At that moment, a specter appears before them and tries to take both of them. Zai arrives just in time to help them. However, Xiao doesn't want him to open the door because she's not wearing makeup and would rather die than be seen by Zai like that. In a flashback from the past, Xiao is seen meeting Zai, who is always out of her reach, belonging to different worlds. However, their destiny was determined from the beginning. He was always a star, and she was just a simple simp. When they reached a certain age, they were engaged, and she was supposed to give him little Zai-chan to continue the family's lineage. People used to gossip about their engagement, but Zai always turned his back on it. Xiao manages to wake up, and they are in a ghostly barrier in the specter's dimension. Yang, being a pathetic loser, still doesn't know how to use his powers and can't solve the situation. Suddenly, the dark mist started to swirl around Yang. Xiao acted quickly and shoved him out of the way just in time before the aura could strike his pathetic self. Our genius boy soon realized that his ring had a mysterious power, but it was too late, as she wasn't herself anymore. The specter tries to get into Xiao's mind, ordering her to kill this ugly bastard for being close to her fiancé, while she worked so hard to be a perfect simp just to get close to him. But he stole the spotlight. Yang tries to talk to her, but she isn't herself anymore. Yang starts to suffocate, even though he's already dead, and he can feel the pain of her grip, and soon enough Yang's vision fades away. He woke up in a strange dream where Xiao walked away from Zai sorrowfully, while others laughed at her. He realizes that she has been through a lot just by being close to Zai. Just as Yang was about to reach out for her hand, Zai pulled him out of the surreal field. Zai asks Yang what kind of weapon he is good at and teaches him how to summon it through the ring. As he concentrates, he is surprised when a spirit blade emerges from his palm. In a split second, he swings it in the air and cuts through the evil spirits possessing Xiao. Zai scolds his fiancée, telling her that members of his family shouldn't be consumed so easily. But she doesn't take to the heart and changes her clothes, tempting our virgin with her massive cannons again. As they walk, our boy, after seeing her intimate memories, decides to support her. He knew she wanted to keep her love despite discarding her pride. The three head out to Zai's mansion, where they can perform a ritual to cleanse the world and recognize Yang as Zai's soul image. Upon arriving at the mansion, the employees were excited about their return, but a young man who was alone didn't show the same enthusiasm. Zai's butler welcomes him and tells him that everything is prepared, and he has a group of young maids at his service. Lei, the bitter man from earlier, approaches the room shirtless to see what all the commotion is about. The butler, who is also his father, scolds him for arriving in that way and speaking to the master like that. He excuses himself, saying he was in a hurry and just wanted to see his master's first spiritual shadow. The butler gets annoyed and tells him to be quiet, but at that moment, a MILF with a hostile face arrives. We come to know that she is like a younger sister of Zai's, who had a complicated relationship with him. It was also clear that Lei also didn't like Zai or the Tengoku family. He hoped that someday they would pay for everything they had done. Yang was baffled to observe that most of the family was so cold towards Zai, even though he was the head of the family. He wondered why, and Exio told him that many wicked spirits and people wanted to take away his life to take his power, including those in his own family who could only survive due to his strength. Suddenly, the grandmother arrives, who is delighted to hear that things between Xiao and Zai seem to be fine. She took the opportunity to introduce herself to Yang, who just a few days ago was a worthless broker, behaves as usual, without manners. But the old lady doesn't mind and is happy that the leader finally has a spiritual shadow. She believes that he should take good care of him, and his parents would be proud, which makes Xiao feel jealous. Our poor boy Yang is surprised by all the wealth surrounding his master and how it's on a different level. Even the sacred mountain gathers energy from the cardinal points, and an altar was built there to maintain the balance between light and darkness. The following day, Zai comes into Yang's room and explains Yang's ring is special. It connects their minds, and they get to know their information. They must always keep it a secret, because if someone gets to know both his and Zai's birthday dates, he will die, and if he dies, Yang will too. Meanwhile, Exio prepares breakfast for her soon-to-be husband while he plays in the rooms with his master. But before we can witness the forbidden intimacy, Exio arrives and sees them together. She gets jealous and sends him flying as if she was a former Olympic champion. Suddenly, Yang sees the family's butler carrying a very special sword. It was gifted to them hundreds of years ago by a famous swordsmith, and he named it the Loi sword. This sword was made to protect the world from evil spirits. Then Lei, the butler's son, showed up and told his father that Zai's grandmother wanted to see him. So he left the family's sword with Lei to take to the shrine. Yang went with Lei to put the sword in its place. They were talking about how Lei hated Zai when all of a sudden, Lei demanded to know Zai's birth date. Yang refused to tell him. In a flash, Lei whipped out his knife and pointed it straight at Yang. Lei lunged at Yang, leaving him no choice but to dodge and weave. But his luck was running out. Soon he found himself backed into a corner. With a sinister grin, Lei uses a forbidden technique and summons evil spirits. The blade sinks into Yang, meeting no resistance as the spirit feels every agonizing stab. He desperately attempts to break free of Lei's grasp, but all the suffering only fuels his murderer's determination. Asking him about Zai's information, Yang desperately clung to a glimmer of hope, watching for an opportunity to strike when Lei became distracted. He lunged forward with his sword, only for the force of Lei's spirit power to render him weak and helpless. Lei thrusts the knife into Yang's chest, causing him to cry out in agony. Darkness clouds his vision, and he quickly falls unconscious. Then, without warning, Yang awakens to find himself in a strange world. He remembers how he constantly asks for Zai's help and is now ready to take things into his own hands. He is determined to do this all by himself. He watched someone standing and holding the Loi sword before him, and he could feel his desire to become stronger and more powerful growing inside of him. With a determined lunge, he finally grasped it in his hands and with one swift motion, swung it towards Lei. Lei couldn't believe what he was seeing. Yang had managed to wield the sword as if it were nothing. He seemed like a different person, his mind consumed with thoughts of strength through murder. But before Yang could stab Lei, something snapped back into place, and he stopped his attack altogether, lowering his guard. Lei lunged forward with accusations of an evil spirit possessing him. Luckily, Zai appeared just in time and blocked the strike. Zai glared at Lei, warning him that nobody was allowed to touch his soul image except for himself. As Lei moved in for another attack, Zai easily pinned him down to the ground and banished Lei and his father from the family. Later that day, the family begins the mysterious ritual. Yang couldn't understand the words Zai was saying, but he could feel an incredible energy coming from him, an energy that seemed almost divine. Yang was mesmerized by the power Zai had to maintain peace and combat evil forces. It was like being close to a god. Zai ordered Yang forward and held up the Loi sword. He commanded Yang to kneel, ready to accept his fate. But there was an unexpected twist. Zai presented him with the blessed weapon, binding their spirits together. Since then, Yang has been having the same strange dream. In the dream, he saw a man named Zi Cheng talking to someone else. Every time Zi Cheng called this person Lord, the stranger would gently remind him that they were like family. Finally, the stranger revealed his name, Louis. Yang couldn't believe his eyes. He felt the Louis' sword burning in his hands, and then he felt Louis' embrace from behind. Suddenly, he saw a vision of the past where Louis was killing innocent victims without mercy. But just when it seemed like the madness would never end, Zi Cheng leapt forward and put an end to it by stabbing his master with one fatal blow. Yang woke up, and his eyes widened with shock as he became aware of the fact that his hands were covered in blood. Looking up, he realized to his horror that it had come from Zai, whom he had stabbed unconsciously. Just then, the car crashed, and Zai started to lose consciousness. Yang was thrown in prison as a punishment. No matter how hard Yang pleaded his innocence, the family refused to listen. Even Xiao doesn't believe what he's saying. Tears streaming down her face, she reprimands him for not being able to keep Zai safe when it was his job as a soul image, and reveals Zai's body wasn't in its best condition after the ritual. Yang's tears began to flow as reality struck him. He remembered Zai's words uttered before the ritual, that this could be their last moment together. Then a servant came in with something special from Zai, an exquisite set of clothes, specially tailored to protect Yang. As he realized how much care and effort had gone into protecting him, Yang was overcome with guilt for hurting his master. But Xiao had a daring proposition for him. If he wanted to be set free, he had to take up the Louis sword and plunge it into his own body. If his loyalty to Zai truly ran deep and pure, then surely no harm would come of it. Yang took the blade and sighed with frustration. He was tired of running away from his problems. But just as he was about to stab himself, Xiao stopped him. She released him and allowed him to visit Xiao's room. There, he met a fox spirit, the soul image of Zai's deceased father. Zai has previously warned him against fighting the fox spirit, but he didn't listen. Yang attacked with a swift swing of his sword, but he was sent flying into another world. Suddenly, a MILF with huge cannons and the lowly girl appeared before him with menacing expressions and threatened to hurt him if he didn't break the soul image contract with Zai. Yang bravely stood firm, confident that the special clothes Zai had given him would protect him from any harm. But the girl was quick to target his unprotected area. Even though no physical damage was done to his hand, the pain was unbearable. The girl beat him until he didn't have any strength left. Suddenly, a fox spirit appeared and took over. He made fun of Yang for having a one-sided contract, as when Zai dies, he'll die too. The fox pointed out that Zai never trusted him, but Yang points out that the fox spirit master is the one who didn't trust the fox. Its master died several years ago, and the fox is still alive. The fox spirit was so mad that it stabbed Yang in the chest, leaving him unable to move. Yang tried desperately to get closer to his sword, and thoughts of his time with Zai filled his head. He knew he couldn't just run away anymore. He had to fight and be stronger if he wanted to protect Zai. The air around Yang began to shimmer and sparkle with a brilliant blue light. Suddenly, he transformed into Zi Cheng, the strongest swordsman of all time. The girl moved forward to try to hit him, but he quickly cut her arm. He dared the fox spirit to battle, but the fox spirit said he wasn't strong enough yet. Instead, the fox gave him a special potion that could help heal Zai. Zai's wounds miraculously heal after drinking the potion, and he rises with new vigor. However, he has lost his spirit power and doesn't know how to recover it. Without telling anyone, they sneak out of the mansion and seek out his teacher to discover the story of the Louis sword. Zai's master told him that his exorcist's powers were hidden inside the Lowy sword. This was created by Zaiching to protect people from evil spirits. But it had another mysterious power too. It could store away the powers of an exorcist so they couldn't use them for bad things. Yang was so surprised when he discovered that Zaiching was the same person from his dreams. Zai said that Yang must be related to Zaiching, and Yang started to think that all of the stories about his family being powerful exorcists. Zai thought about how he could get his powers back while heading back, and Yang asked why he didn't want to stop being an exorcist. Zai replied that many spirits were waiting for a chance to take him down if he ever got too weak. He then told Yang that there were things in this world even scarier than evil spirits, humans. Before them stood an unexpected surprise, Lei, ready to take them on in a battle they weren't expecting. Lei laughed wickedly and rushed towards them. Yang quickly unsheathed his sword and fought back. Lei was too fast though, managing to blast the area above them. Yang used the distraction to run away with Zai. Yang knew he had to do something to regain Zai's power. Zai reveals they have two options, to seal the Lowy sword, and the other one is to Yang sacrifice himself to give his power to Zai. Zai's wounds were getting worse, and he asked Yang to leave him behind, telling him that without his powers, there was no reason for Zai to live. But Yang refused to abandon his friend and saw beyond the godlike facade, understanding that underneath it all, Zai was still a human with emotions and feelings. Yang embraces him and mentions the deal where he'll vanish once Zai dies, but Zai confesses that it's not true. As long as he's wearing the hair tie, he will live. Lei manages to find them deep in the forest. Zai planted a peck on Yang's ring, and in an instant, a burst of visions flooded his mind, revealing to him exactly what drove Zaiching to protect his master. All of a sudden, brilliant blue light filled the night sky as it made way for Yang's transformation into Zaiching. Yang lunged forward, attempting to slice through Lei, but Lei was too fast and managed to dodge his blade. Then Lei used his powerful evil spirit to strike back at Yang. Despite this, Yang's sword seemed to cut right through it like butter. However, he wasn't able to injure him, as if the arm was made of stronger steel. All of a sudden, Lei pulled out a mysterious talisman that had the power to control spirits. An evil aura started swirling around Yang, and he found himself unable to escape its grasp. Zai grabbed a paper talisman, desperately trying to block the mind-controlling spell. But it was too late. Yang had already been frozen in place and collapsed down to his knees, despite his sword still pointed outwards for protection. He couldn't move enough to protect his master. Zai tried to fight back against Lei, but he couldn't. Without hesitating, Lei reached out to grab the hair tie off his head and wrapped it into a voodoo doll, casting an incredibly powerful spell on Zai that brought immense pain and suffering. Yang's heart raced as he watched his master suffer, and he knew he had to do something. Taking a deep breath, Yang cut the hair tie with one swift motion. He knew he couldn't take on Lei himself, so instead, he used every ounce of spirit power within him to cut the hair tie, tears streaming down his face. Knowing that this would be his last act of service to his master, Yang sacrificed himself in hopes that one day Zai would become the most powerful exorcist the world had ever seen. Yang's eyes shot open, and he found himself in a void of darkness. He thought he saw his parents, but he was hesitant to move toward them. He could feel Zai calling out to him. So, instead of chasing after the illusion of his parents, Yang summoned his sword and ran off in search of Zai. Somehow, he manages to wake up after Zai uses his spiritual power to return his spirit back. He watches Lei's evil spirits lift Zai into the air. He reaches out his hand and rescues Zai from Lei's wicked snare. With a sword in hand, he bravely stands in the way of Lei's wrath. He is determined to protect Zai no matter what. It's his mission as Zai's sole image. He charged at Lei, smashing each spiritual attack that came his way. He leapt high into the sky, and with a mighty swing, he defeated Lei in one fell swoop. Thanks for watching, and also do mention in the comment section if there is anything that I should be improving on my channel. See you all in the next recap. Goodbyes until then.